Hello there, everybody, and welcome to another. I said, I always want to say episode when I react to videos, but another video. Uh, I could have checked out. I got 7 kids, but they're not my responsibility from playback or dreadlocks while they training in Japan from this dude I just seen, or the dumbest wannabe gangster, which is Patrick CC's take on John Morant, who's potentially ruining his future maybe if he doesn't stop now. But I went with why did Angry Birds go bankrupt? I'm curious because I used to play Angry Birds when I was younger, so I want to know.
Angry Birds is now completely and utterly irrelevant. If you could
Irrelevant,
travel
yeah.
back in time and tell this fact to somebody in the early 2010s, they simply wouldn't have believed you.
I didn't
That's
play that
because
much, but
a
I played
decade
this
ago,
song.
Angry Birds was more than just the #1 mobile game series of all time. Angry Birds was a true media empire with games, toys, movies, and more. The franchise was bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars. Analysts were projecting Angry Birds to be a global brand, similar to that of Pokemon or Hello Kitty. The iconic red bird seemed unstoppable. But now, the name Angry Birds is nothing but a distant memory. The brand has rapidly faded into irrelevance and is now a forgotten relic of the internet's past.
That's true.
Everybody was rooting for Angry Birds in their studio,
I
thanks
wasn't.
to the team having such an
Not really. I didn't really.
unbelievably inspiring story.
Did they?
The year
I
was
didn't know.
2003.
I didn't know the backstory. I just
Three
played the game.
students at Helsinki University in Finland decided to join a mobile game development contest. Despite stiff competition, the three won thanks to a game they created and later sold called King of the Cabbage World. This was a pivotal moment for the three young students. They realized that their burning passion for creativity and gaming could lead to a seriously lucrative career. That's when they decided to go all in on a mobile game company, which they named Reload. After less than a year in operation, the three decided to change the name of their company to Rovio, the Finnish word for bonfire. It made sense. They all shared a burning passion for creativity. The following years were brutally difficult for the company. Remember, this was all before the advent of the smartphone that we know today. Their bet on mobile gaming was a wild idea this early. This resulted in the company making a whopping 51 games that all flopped. None of the games they created were really selling or had gained any serious traction.
He said it's before the mobile phone, right? So did they sell like PSP type things that PSP? How I don't get how games work. Like how he said it was before. I'm lost.
By
I'm lost.
2009, the team was in a dire financial situation, at risk of folding completely. But suddenly, a light bulb went off.
At Fry's, we believe that our high standards ensure fresher produce. Fry's, fresh for
Stop.
everyone.
Bro, I just skipped it. You guys see me skip it, right? You got. You
When
know
you
what?
get your next big
You know what, bro?
idea,
You know what, bro?
say
You guys see me
broccoli
skip it.
ketchup.
Right?
They had an idea for their 50-second game, Angry Birds. They loved the concept of birds that had no legs, so their only way of launching forward was with a slingshot. And best of all, the iPhone's touchscreen allowed for an engaging launching mechanic, as well as trajectory lines. The team launched their 50-second title with Angry Birds, and, well, it didn't immediately take off. But
Really?
6 months later, the momentum and hype had built to the point where the Angry Birds was at the #1 spot on the app.
You know what I wonder? For games I go, actually, never mind. That was gonna be a stupid question. I was gonna be like, for games that go free and doesn't really have like you could pay to get shit in game. How does that work? Like, how do you get? I don't know, bro.
App Store charts.
Like,
At
how
this
do you get
time,
money from the
most
games?
apps that hit #1 had a good 2-week
Is it
run of
from
glory
ads? I
and
think it
then
might
fell
be from
into
ads.
obscurity. But not Angry Birds, which stayed at the top for 275 days.
Dang.
The game exceeded expectations for the team in no time, quickly becoming their first and only profitable and popular title. Globally, people were talking about Angry Birds. Practically overnight, children, mums, grandmas were all playing this simple yet addictive game. It didn't just take the US by storm.
Damn, that sucks. Y'all
It
missed
took
everything.
the entire world by
Really?
storm. As the upward trajectory continued, Angry Birds became more than a game. It was a true cultural phenomenon. There wasn't a single individual, young or old, who wasn't aware of the game, or who couldn't immediately recognize one of the characters. Merchandise was flying off of the shelves. Suddenly, every kid was sporting Angry Birds apparel and begging their parents for the plushies. The once mobile game snowballed into a franchise that the small Finnish company never could have dreamed of. Angry Birds was the coolest and most relevant brand, for many outright defining the early 2010s. The team knew that they had more than a game. They had an empire. Immediately, they set their sights on growing Angry Birds into a brand, similar to that of Disney or Pokemon. They knew they had to build on their momentum and build on it quickly. The company changed the name to Rovio Entertainment, better reflecting their new direction. No longer just game development. They needed to focus on building a global brand. They needed to build an Angry Birds universe. It took Angry Birds 3 years, from 2009 to 2012, to hit 1 billion downloads. In 2014, just 2 years later, Angry Birds hit 2 billion downloads. All the while, Rovio was creating more Angry Birds games that built off the initial concept. If you had access to a phone in the early 2010s, you'll know the titles. Angry Birds Seasons, Angry Birds Rio, Angry Birds Friends, Angry Birds Space, Star Wars.
I did play Space and Star Wars.
The game was growing in popularity and the brand was expanding. The global popularity was so massive that they even built a theme park in central China. Hello Kitty was a $9 billion business. Why couldn't Angry Birds be the same? The founders leaned all in. Needless to say, the brand had become a cash cow, the likes of which had never been seen for a mobile game. In 2012, they had made $195 million in revenue, and a staggering 50% of their revenue was coming from merchandise. It seemed like it was all going up, that they were becoming the unstoppable brand that everyone expected them to be. But there was a lot more going on below the surface. Cracks were forming, which eventually led to the downfall of the unstoppable brand.
Damn, what happened?
While the Angry Birds craze was taking over the globe, a less hopeful picture was emerging. A company that was so focused on milking a franchise that they forgot what made them popular in the first place: good games. For example, in 2012, during the peak of Angry Birds fever, Rovio released a new game, The Amazing Alex. It was a mobile game focused around puzzles and physics, a concept that was not too dissimilar to Angry Birds. The game failed to gain any noteworthy success. There's a reason that you never heard of it. This was indicative of the company's true success potential. Game number 52, Angry Birds, was the smash hit of all smash hits. But game number 53, a boring, uninspiring failure, just like games number 1 to 51 that the company had released. Were they a team of experts who finally cracked the code for making the perfect game and franchise?
Or got lucky?
Or were they a team that got exceptionally lucky with just one game? Well, Angry Birds kept releasing more games, and each game seemed increasingly less original, less creative, and less adored than the one prior. For example, the team released Angry Birds Transformers, which was a bizarre side-scroller game that begged for microtransactions every step of the way. Expectedly, the game was shunned by critics and fans alike, failing to make any meaningful returns. A similar story can be said for Angry Birds Fight, which was a clear and obvious rip-off of Candy Crush, but with Angry Birds characters. In addition, the same can be said for Angry Birds Go, which was a lackluster Mario Kart rip-off. The games were getting worse, and the fans were getting increasingly bored.
Once or twice.
It became clear to the fans of the franchise that fun, unique, creative games were no longer the priority of Rovio. Instead, there was one clear focus for the company hoping to IPO. Pump out as many gaming titles that have the name Angry Birds attached to it.
You know what I don't get? How did they get hit with no copyright stuff? Because they literally went Angry Birds Star Wars. Like, unless Star Wars gave them their IP, it would be IP. To use that stuff, then how are they using it?
All in an effort to milk more money through sales and merchandising. The company quickly found themselves in a bad place after the new titles absolutely underwhelmed and underperformed. In 2014, Rovio laid off 110 employees, which was around 15% of their workforce. The boring titles and failure to properly evolve with the ever-changing internet led the once cool brand to become rapidly uncool. This dramatically impacted merchandise sales as well, which was the most devastating for the company. By the mid-2010s, Rovio was in a bad place. They had put all of their proverbial and digital eggs in one basket: Angry Birds. Even with funded studios that were solely responsible for creating brand new original concepts, absolutely nothing gained momentum. The team had struck gold with Angry Birds, a phenomenon they were unable to replicate. The only strategy they could rely on was milking the brand for absolutely everything it was worth, hoping that miraculously they'd regain a fan base. To no one's surprise, this failed. By the mid-2010s, the relevance of Angry Birds was a mere fraction of what it was just a few years prior. From 2014 to 2015, merchandise sales had fallen by 43%. Rovio had to fire an additional 260 employees. A brand that revolves around a mobile game will only be cool, quirky, and unique for so long. In order to sustain success, you have to build new success. Disney didn't just try to coast off Mickey Mouse's successful debut for 80 years, building nothing praiseworthy in the time between. No. Disney built an empire by having Mickey Mouse in multiple unique, original titles that were all widely beloved. At the same time, they were building multiple other entities through the overarching brand. This is a strategy that Rovio was unable to execute. Instead, they only had one strategy to rely on: have a splash hit with a 2009 mobile game, then try to coast off its popularity for as long as you can. This is a strategy that simply can't last more than a few years, which is what we saw with Angry Birds.
Mild
I
or
was still paying
spicy?
attention.
Spicy. Lab or poodle? Backroads or
Husky.
By 2015, the impact and brand power of Angry Birds was all but dead. The thought of wearing an Angry Birds t-shirt or owning an Angry Birds
seen anybody
plushie
wearing
was
Angry
no
Birds
longer
t-shirt.
the exciting and novel concept it was in 2010. As the company was tanking, they did receive their saving grace in 2016, the Angry Birds movie. Thanks to the animated movie appeal for kids, as well as a star-studded cast with faces like Bill Hader and Danny McBride, the movie did quite well, earning $352 million against a $73 million budget. The second movie, however, released in 2019, earned $152 million, less than half of what the first movie made. Also, in 2019, the company potentially put the nail in the coffin of any hope for regaining success. They made one of the biggest possible mistakes, which dramatically put off the few remaining loyal fans of the franchise.
What'd they do?
They had removed the old Angry Birds games from mobile phones without any warning. This means that if you had an Angry Birds game on an older device, suddenly, one day, you were completely unable to play it. It's not a surprise why they did this. The company was in shambles, only barely hanging on to a small bump in popularity thanks to a successful first movie. Now, their only hope towards profitability was pushing fans to their newer, more lucrative games, rife with microtransactions. This was just one more misstep from a company that had failed to do anything right by their fan base. After intense backlash from the now small Angry Birds community, they released an apology. Dear fans, the old Angry Birds games are some of the most loved, downloaded, and known games in the world. We know. We're so proud to have made them, and we are overwhelmingly happy that they've meant so much to you. But then, we took them out of circulation and didn't say anything, and that let you down. Not cool. We promise our heart was in the right place. We wanted to focus on building new and even better games to serve our players in the best possible way going forward. Now, Rovio is doing the only thing left to do for a dying franchise. They're re-releasing the original Angry Birds for devices and consoles. At this point, the only hope for the company is in relying on the nostalgia factor of the joy we all felt a decade ago playing such a unique title.
I didn't know they were doing it for console. When's that coming out? Not like I'm a player or anything, but just curious. During the years when the brand started losing its power, 2013 to 2015, it was reported in Finnish media and also on Finnish discussion forums etc. by Rove and ex-employees that the main issue with Rove was the company grew extremely fast and they suddenly ended up with extreme top slash mid heavy structure, meaning that most people in the company were mid managers who didn't create any value but instead started a lot of internal conflicts and blocked new projects, etc. Because of this power struggle, BS, some teams with Rove couldn't get resources internally, and so they had to hire external third party consultants to help with stuff they were building. Lots of money and time and money and effort got wasted. And yeah, I thought so. I thought that was gonna be one of the things that was gonna be brought up, but he didn't say it. So I was like, makes sense. Thanks for the insight. There's always more that I could cover. That's true. Like, subscribe. See you guys later. Hope you have a good day or night, and bye. And let me know if Angry Birds comes to console or phones. I'm pretty sure they're gonna have microtransactions to unlock every bird. But if it does come, would you guys play it? Let me know.